Hello, welcome back. My name's Grandmaster Daniel Gormally. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, which is called Hometown Chess Hero. So please like the video, please subscribe to the channel. So today we're going to be talking about games from Sunway Sitges, which is near Barcelona. So it's a big European Open, and I was considering playing this tournament, but the problem is, as a 2440 GM, you don't get great conditions. I think you get like a discount on the accommodation. That was it. That was all they were offering. But obviously they have very strong tournaments, so that's understandable. I think if you're a 2600 plus GM, then you would get pretty decent conditions. Maybe 2700 players start to get fees. There's one 2700 player playing in this, which is Dominguez. Apparently he needs to gain enough rating to qualify for the candidates. However, generally speaking, players of his level do not play in Opens because they know it's like quite likely they'll lose points. So it's partly an act of desperation, I think, that he feels like this is my last shot. But we're going to have a look at some of the games and try and calculate some variations. Do our usual thing about trying to calculate long variations. So this is kind of left theory, right? So it's white to play in this position. White to play is 2495 IM. He's playing against likely to be GM. He's higher rated than me. He's an IM, but he's obviously a good player. He's playing against Puranik, who's 26-27. He's an Indian player, I think, quite a young Indian player. It's a name is quite familiar, actually. So as white to play, what should white play? So there is the possibility of maybe bringing the knight to d2. So again, let's think about candidate moves. a4 is a candidate move. Knight d2 is a good move. Why is knight d2 a good move? Knight d2 is a good move because you develop the knight. Your idea would be to bring the rook to e1 and then the knight to f1 and then bring the knight to g3 later. Where it's better placed and doesn't block the bishop. And the problem is, like this bishop, a lot of players would, amateur players would automatically develop the bishop, which may or may not be a good move. However, is that bishop there on a good square, or is it later going to be attacked by maybe d5, d4? At the moment, black is, got a bit of a problem with the c5 pawn. So he could go d6. Now, does white consider the move d4? Is that a good option? It's an interesting option. I don't know if it's a good option. At d4 you could go cd, bishop g4 is generally a useful move in this position to pin the knight. So having gone there, white would then consider whether you want to go h3 before d4 or whether you want to go d4 immediately. Now if you go h3, you're probably going to castle. This looks like a sensible move. Then again, white have a decision to make. Do you go d4 or do you maybe build up first? I mean, you could play d4. I think d4 now makes a lot of sense. Also wondering if black could consider move f5 here, because now maybe f4 is starting to come into the equation. So a lot to consider. Let's see any other games going on. Quite a lot of games still in theory, I'm guessing. Yeah, this looks like theory. Is there any other games that are slightly more advanced? So this opening looks like a Nimzo Indian. White has just gone a3. This is Brandon Jacobson from USA. He's a GM. He's a pretty decent GM. The same sort of generation as people like that Penguin, right? Andrew Tang and people like that. Maybe Naroditsky as well. He might be slightly older. How old is Naroditsky actually? I think he might be early 30s now, or late 20s at least. Yeah, anyway, so this position, probably same sort of generation as people like Jeffrey Young as well. e4, 92, b6, yeah. Not sure about 93 actually. By the way, I did a little poll about online about European Championships. Should the European Chess Championships, there's a European Chess Championships going on at the moment. It's a rapid play. And as far as I'm aware, there's only one player. In fact, there's no players who are rated over 2600 at classical chess that are playing in the tournament. So there's not a single 27. There are players who are rated over 2700 at rapid play who are playing, like Navarra, but nobody who's rated over 2700 at classical chess playing in the tournament. There are players who've been over 2700 in the past, like Navarra, like Ivanchuk. Now I did a poll and I said, does this mean that this is not a proper European Championships? And people were like, it doesn't matter, they can only beat who is in front of them. However, I would make the point that if you had a World Championships, so there's 9 players currently on the live rating list who are rated over 2700 who are European. There would have been more if Russia still counted as European, or if a lot of the players from Russia didn't change federation. So there's quite a few who could have played but didn't play. Why didn't they play? Because they're not getting good fees. They're not. It's not an exciting tournament. If someone like Magnus, it isn't exciting playing the European Rapid Blitz. He's already committed to the World Blitz, which is, the same month essentially. So the problem with European tournaments are, I don't think it has the same prestige as the World Championships. So you look at the European Individual Championships, which is a classical tournament, not Rapid and Blitz. That's also fairly short on very big names. Whereas the World Championships has always got a lot of players. And I think the reason is there's a prestige to winning the World Championships that you don't have with the European Championships. When someone like Magnus drops out of the World Championship, creates big news. If somebody like a strong player decides not to play in European Championships, nobody blinks an eyelid. So I think the reason for that is it just doesn't have the same prestige and the same kind of excitement amongst the top pros to win the European Championships. And there's not the kind of sponsorship that would lure them in. If you put enough money there, they would still come and play. So I would make the point that I do think that it actually undermines, I don't think you can call that a European Championships in my opinion. And the reason is, I would use a comparison to the World Championships. If you had the top 10 players in the World Championships decide to drop out, nobody would follow that tournament. Nobody would regard it as a World Championships. If the top, and then Magnus has dropped out, but that's one player. If the top 10 on the rating list decide, I didn't want to play the World Championships, nobody would take it seriously as a World Championships, in my opinion. So when people on the poll are saying, well, actually, it doesn't matter, I think that's because they don't really care about the European Championships. But if it's the same thing happened to World Championships, then everybody would be like, yeah, this is a joke. This is not really. So it's interesting. I might run a separate poll and say, if the top 10 players fall out of the World Championships, would you regard it as a serious tournament? And see what people say. Anyway, that's enough babbling. Back to the chess. So what is the current position on the board? Yeah, this is a very typical position you can get from these kind of openings. Bear in mind that black would like to play this move, but actually that loses on the spot because Queen A4 check. So the question is then, how do you carry on? What white wants to do is generally play Bishop G5 and maybe later on in the game play E5 and gain some kind of attack. Also moves like F4 are coming into the equation. F4, F5. So white's plan is to generally attack on the king side. On the other hand, he's kind of given it up on the queen side. He probably realizes that C4 will drop eventually. But he feels that it would just take black too much time, or yeah, he won't be able to gain much. Even if he does take on C4, the white will still have a good attacking chance. So a very natural move here would be something like Rook C8. So you could calculate Rook C8. So let's try and calculate a long variation. Rook C8. How do we play? Maybe rook c8, e5 actually. e5, de, de, queen d1, rook d1. Knight fd7, knight e4. Knight takes e5, knight d6, king e7. Knight c8, rook c8. Very good compensation for black. That's one possible variation. I'm not saying that's a good variation at all, but it is a variation. I mean, sometimes it's better to calculate bad variations than not calculate at all, because at least you're using your brain. Queen a4 is a move. Look at your captures and checks. Doesn't seem to game much. Queen d7. What other moves does white have? Bishop g5. Let's say I went bishop g5, you just went h6. What am I gaining from bishop g5? Not a lot. You probably then have to go back. Let's say I went f4. f4, cd, cd, bishop c4. Yeah, I don't see. So I'm thinking here that black seems to have a good position. So what is the actual computer evaluation here? I'm probably misjudging it, but I feel like black has a good position. Yeah, I'm right. Yeah, the computer likes black. Somehow white's misplayed this. My rook c8 is probably not very good. Yeah, f4 and then... now you go e5. Right. But if you castle immediately, you've got a very good position. They could have something like this. And it says that black's better. h6. Tough move to find. So interesting. Another player that's doing well is this James Morris. And he's not a name very familiar with. He had a very good game yesterday. Very accurate game. Now he's playing against Vignesh. So he beat someone quite good. Alexenko, I believe, from Ukraine. He's very good players, like 2600. He often does well in Puzzle Rush. Whenever I play Puzzle Rush on chess.com, he's playing very well on Puzzle Rush. But I had a question, like a general knowledge question I put online earlier. We were talking about records and scores, right? Firstly, what's your record Puzzle Rush score? Put that down below if you can. But yeah, I looked this question up earlier because I was on the bike in the gym and I was thinking, oh, I'm really slow on the bike. I don't know if anyone does any cycling. What is the quickest anyone's ever achieved on a bicycle, like a normal bicycle, not a motorbike? Obviously on a motorbike, you can, in theory, you can go maybe over 200 miles an hour. I don't know. But on a normal bicycle, what is the top speed that somebody's achieved by any means? You know, if you know the answer without Googling it, I'll be impressed. Or you can guess that answer. Or if you know it, maybe you know it. You've seen it before. But this position looks like it arose from a Sicilian. Let's have a look at the opening. Yeah, I've seen this line before. So black plays queen d6. The idea is to cut. So white goes f4, which in theory is quite a good move because it defends e5. Obviously, the pawn was going to hang. I mean, you could, in theory, you could try to give up the pawn, but there's not a good way to do it. I mean, you could play this. But I don't think you get enough comments. Sometimes you can give up this pawn and get enough play. I mean, probably against computer, you'd get slaughtered here as black. But I'm guessing it's going to be like knight f4 and you're going to lose the bishop pair. I mean, maybe that's a decent move. So generally speaking, white goes f4. This is very well-known theory. Black would like to undermine that by f6, but that kind of weakens the king side. So queen d6 is very normal. And now the normal response is this move, king e2. If you go here, it's well known that queen e3 is going to be unpleasant. Actually, it's also maybe knight e3 is another option. No, knight f4, sorry. Yeah, I think you just go check, and that's annoying check, right? Because if I go queen e2, I'm likely to drop this pawn at some point. Like bishop takes d2, knight takes d2, you just take and take on f4, so it's no good. So you have to go king e2. Again, bishop a6 is a move, but then you go king f3. All looks very weird, but the king is fairly secure. There's no checks that can disturb it. So black has to create some kind of counterplay. Plays f5, king f3, knight e7, bishop c5, you take, queen d6, queen a5, interesting move. Doesn't want to take, because if you take, knight c8, c5, there's a real bind there for white, really unpleasant position. So he plays queen a5, h4. So black is thinking, how can black play? Tricky decision. The problem is you would like to go castles, but that drops the knight. It could get a danger zone. You know, you could play king f7 and mirror what white is doing. He's gone rook d8, which actually looks like a very sensible decision because he wants to play king f7. But first he's defending the d pawn. Yeah, I don't know. This James Morris is not a player I'm that familiar with. I think James Morris is about 29 years of age. I looked him up last night. It's not a name that he's from New Zealand. Now in New Zealand you don't get a chance to play much chess actually. You know, there aren't that many good tournaments in New Zealand. I was talking the other day about how I played against this 10-year-old. Some people describe the best 10-year-old in history, Faustino Oro. It's kind of freaky how he's probably stronger than me and he's only 10. I find that slightly almost disturbing, right? Maybe no, disturbing is not the right word, but yeah, it's kind of freaky. It's like a freak, right? That somebody could be that good when they're 10. But he's potentially moved. I think he's moved. Somebody said he's moved from Argentina to Spain because Spain they have a lot of chess tournaments. If you want to move to a country, you say, right, where's a country where I can play constant chess? You know, there's lots of good tournaments, lots of big tournaments like this tournament we're looking at the moment, Sitges. Move to Spain, right? Or you move to Germany, or probably have to move somewhere in Europe. I mean, now America is known for quite a lot of tournaments, but back in the day, back in say like the 2000s, 2010s, and stuff like that. Even maybe 10, 15 years ago, it wasn't a great place to go and play chess. There weren't that many tournaments. I remember speaking to Eric Hansen, who actually lived in Canada, so that's even more remote. And he said, you have to come over to Europe to play tournaments. And so in South America, there aren't that many tournaments. And the same thing for this James Morris. He probably lives in New Zealand. There probably aren't that many tournaments. He has to come over to Europe and play a lot, right? Me with my fear of flying, I would have been no good in New Zealand. Murray Chandler came over and he played a lot. He came and ended up playing for England because he moved to England because there weren't enough tournaments in New Zealand. He was a very keen chess player. He was a pretty strong player when he moved to England. He ended up becoming affiliated with Charlton Chess Club. I remember Peter Hannon, who ran a burger hut or ran some kind of food hut on Blackheath Common for years, and he was putting up Murray Chandler, and he said Murray Chandler was like working on chess when I left for the burger hut, and when I came back he was still working on chess. It's really impressive, like the work ethic. On the other hand, also you have to bear in mind that he's got a limited amount of time. He's probably thinking, right, I've got a limited amount of time to do something over here. You know, I've come all the way to England. I can't just like, you know, go down a pub or whatever. I've got to take this seriously. I've got to treat this properly, and you know, it paid off. He became a pretty strong player, right? But yeah, go back to this game. I'm not sure how white plays this at all, to be honest. I don't understand this position. I guess you could just develop. I mean, like a move like bishop e2 springs to mind. I'm too lazy to work out what white should do here. Maybe h5. But h5, it feels a bit vague. Let's say h5, you go king f7. Bishop e2. Maybe black will play at some point, go c5, knight c6 as well. That's also something to bear in mind. And if black gets that in, actually, doing quite well, because knight c6 will threaten knight d4 check. So you could also you could play b3, and if c5, then knight d3. So probably c5 would be premature, but knight d3, there is queen d2 check, or bishop b7 check. Yeah, and moves like b4 look a little bit too loose now. I don't really like b4 here for white. I feel that's maybe possible, but I'm not sure how white plays this, to be totally honest. I'd rather be black in a way, and he's got more time as well. I mean, I feel like actually, I think if I had to predict this result, I would say it's going to be a win for black or a draw. Black looks very solid and set up for a counter-attack. Not convinced about white's position. I know the computer favours white slightly, but again we could cheat, as I'm clearly unable to work out. Yeah, bishop e2 is the top move. Now if you go king f7, it's saying knight c8, which looks a little bit, that's not a very good move actually. What about c5 immediately? c5 immediately, but if you go here, I haven't got knight c6, knight d3, right? Maybe. Like here, oh, king g3, wow. And then you get some weird line. This is also playable for black. Very unclear position. Yeah, very tough to work this all out. So, yeah, I think white's under a little bit of pressure here. I don't really like this line for white that much. I don't like having my king marching around the board. How's Dominguez getting on? Same dead equal. It's Dominguez to play. He's black against Petro Golubka. With a name like that, it sounds Eastern European, possibly, but it could also be Spanish. Petro's like a Spanish name. Golubka is like, sounds Polish. Another player I'm unfamiliar with. Dominguez, we've heard a lot about in recent years. He's based in San Luis now in America. I believe he lives there. But he's originally from Cuba. So Cuba is, I believe that's like the largest island in the Caribbean. It's under communist rule. I was thinking this yesterday actually. I was thinking the best thing about, if you had communism everywhere, and it was proper communism where people had like a set wage, they couldn't earn beyond that. One great thing about it would be you wouldn't have all these rich footballers who earn silly money. That'd be the one great thing about it. So black to play here. Yeah, this moves like d5 come into the equation. So I quite like the way black's played this. He's defending this bishop with a pawn. How is white intending to develop? He's played move at h4. That looks like a strange move, but it's quite typical in the Scotch. Doesn't look like it's attacking much though. White could consider moves like g3 and bishop h3 to develop. So one move is simply the castle here for white. For black, sorry. I don't see what's wrong with that. By the way, Hastings that I'm playing in a few days, well, starts 27th, few weeks I should say. It's getting stronger and stronger now. The 10th seed 2500. So when I joined, I was like, I can't remember. I was like somewhere in the middle of the top 10 seeds. I was like 5th or 6th seed maybe, or maybe even higher than that. And there were 10 prizes, so it sounded great to play, but now it's getting worse and worse because it's so this is a problem now when you play chess tournaments. It's like, are you even playing to try and win money, right? You want to win money, but it's becoming tougher and tougher. You get this way. ultimately I decided not to play in this Sitges tournament because the prize money is probably not bad, but how do you get into prizes, right? You know, it's a gamble. You could play well enough. I could play well enough in theory that I'm going to win a prize, but it's not guaranteed. I'd say I would have like a 30% chance I'd win a prize. Maybe even less than that. Yeah, I'm not sure mathematically. There's going to be an awful lot of 2400 players who don't win a prize. So, yeah, it's a gamble. Life's a gamble, right? I do plenty of gambling anyway, so maybe I should have taken a punt. But this position, yeah, it looks okay for black. Also, you could consider d5, but then I guess he takes on pass on. Maybe even take this way, right? There's moves like knight d4 or just simply bishop d3. Maybe knight d4 is keep also taking possible, or castle queenside maybe. Yeah. Knight g5 option. I don't know. It's a tricky position to assess. So I think not the best move is d5. That's not the best move. There's also castle's queenside. Maybe, yeah, I think castling looks most normal. And then quickly bring a rook to e8. And then hit white in the centre with some kind of d6 or d5. I think that's most likely to happen. Sasha Kieran versus Jonah Willow. Interesting, like, English player representing us. Jonah Willow, who's... I believe he's from the Midlands, Jonah, like Nottingham area. But I'm not sure about that. Krishnan Sasha Kieran is Indian. I played him several times back in the day. I played him in a tournament in Hampstead. Actually played him in a couple of British Chess Championships. I played him in a British Chess Championship in Torquay. He wiped me out in like really quickly. He was 17 at the time, and there were these. He played in a rapid play actually. I remember thinking this kid seems quite good. I think he was like 24.90 at the time, and I played him. At some point during the tournament, he wiped me out in like 17 moves, and the king's in. At some point, I went like I misjudged the position. I went like bishop g4. To try and... It's worth looking at game up, actually. I went like bishop g4 and then tried to trade bishops, and then he somehow actually facilitated his attack because his queen went from c8 down to h3 later on, and it actually accelerated his attack for him. So it was quite an instructive game, certainly from my point of view. And I got wiped off the board very quickly, and I remember being very impressed and thinking, wow, this guy's... And I saw an interview in Capel. I played Capel, and I saw this interview with him. He was talking about, and somebody said, how many hours do you spend studying chess, right? He said, I generally try to do at least 12 hours a day. I was like, what? 12 hours a day? That's like, I'm not doing that much. You know, I'm too lazy, right? You know, like, I want to watch Countdown, you know, it's like... There wasn't Netflix back then, thank God, but, you know, it's just like too much. I wish I had actually done more. You don't need to do 12 hours a day. But I should have really gotten after it more when I was younger. I should have done more college courses. I should have done a lot more to try and promote my life. I'm trying to do that now. So I realise I'm running out of time to do stuff in life. But, yeah, and I played Sasha Kieran. Also played him in the British Championships in Scarborough. I also actually beat him, actually, in a tournament in Hampstead. And then when I got my final GM nom, I drew with him like a long endgame in Gibraltar. But he's dipped below 2600 now. And I think the reason for that is he probably still plays a fair bit in India. And there's loads and loads of like super strong kids in India who are just unbelievably good. And they're unbelievably underrated. So it's just going to drag his rating down. And he probably play. I mean, you know, even if you play like it's almost like this, you're playing lots of underrated juniors, so it's very, very tough. But he was like one of the like super kids. Like Harry Krishna was the same generation as well. That, you know, emerged before we've had all these kids now. We have like Pragananda and Gukesh, and if you wanted a bet and you said, look, there's going to be like 30 Indian players in the top 100 in 10 years' time, you probably got a fairly safe bet. They're going to dominate chess for the next 20 odd years. That's pretty clear. But yeah, this game, very positional approach by Sasha Kiran. I like it. I really like it. What he's doing here, the sash. So he's playing some kind of nice guy, actually, Sasha Kiran. Very talented player. He's playing what's it called? King's Indian attack, which Bobby Fischer used. So black has gone e5, which is a weird looking move. Looks weird, you've already put the pawn out. I'm not sure that's a great move, but it's an interesting move. I personally would have gone d5 or just castled. Another option is b6, but Jonah knows what he's doing. He's gone e5, which is fair, pretty reasonable actually. The problem is, with all this, you're giving away some light squares, which, positionally speaking, is not ideal. So knight d2, very clever move. Yeah, knight dc5. Yeah, very good positional game by White, I would say. f5. Computer hates f5. Why does it hate f5? Maybe it's just too weakening, right? It's just too, your king is not great. Or maybe it just sees that there's better options. So what other counter moves does black have? He can't go queen d7, or he shouldn't go queen d7 because of knight d6. I mean, he could play a waiting move like h6, but the other move I would say that looks really fairly obvious is d5. And that I would have strongly considered as black. I'm not sure if I would have played it, but it's certainly a move I would have considered. And that seems to be something the computer seems to prefer to f5. So d5 you take. So let's say I take, but then bishop d5. I think black is very comfortable. Or maybe not, I don't know. Maybe black isn't very comfortable. Knight b5 is an option. Knight b5, bishop g2, king g2, queen d7. No, still can't go queen d7 because of knight b6. I could go queen d5 though. Queen d5, queen f3, rook d8, queen takes d5, rook takes d5, rook d1, rook f d8, bishop e3, knight f5, let's say knight b6, knight takes e3, fe3, rook d3, rook d3, rook d3, black's better. But yeah, I'm not sure how forced that line is. So the other option is just move the knight somewhere. But then maybe if you move the knight, maybe I'll start to go like d4. Well, then you can hop back again, right? So that makes some kind of sense. Another option is just to go here. But yeah, I think d4 probably would be most logical. I think takes, black is very comfortable. Bishop takes. Yeah, I'm not sure, but he's gone f5, so why is f5 so bad? Comp hates f5. I think the difference between someone like Jonah, and I'll put myself in that category, as being similar sort of strength. You compare him to someone like Sasha Kiran, or like even go even further and say like 2700 or top players in the world. I think the difference is that they're quite strong in certain areas. We're quite strong in certain areas, I should say, but the best players are more rounded in the sense they don't have as many weaknesses in their game. As I say, someone like Jonah is probably quite good in very good in certain areas. in certain positions. He probably doesn't understand as many positions well as someone like Sasha Kiran, if that makes sense. So Sasha Kiran's played f4. Yeah, good move, f4. Yeah, I like f4. I like a very aggressive attacking move. Yeah, Sasha Kiran could be handing him out a lesson here. I don't know, but it's too early to say because the position is still very unclear. Okay, let's say you took and went d5. How bad is that? There's some tactical reason why this is just not good. Comp seems to hate all this for black. I'm struggling. Oh, maybe you take, actually. Because if you take with a knight, I have bishop d6, I win material. If you take with a bishop, feels a little bit. Maybe I just take, right? Yeah, let's say you take with a bishop. There's also moves like rook e1 here. Knight b5 again. Knight b5. This is the problem with the move f5. Is you're weak in certain squares. Like e6 is now weak. Your king is now a little bit more vulnerable. And this could be like a key factor. Maybe not. I don't know. So bishop d6 is one move I would definitely consider. That's a candidate move because now I'm hitting here. And I'm also threatening to take here now and win the exchange. So you probably get forced to take. And now play this. But you're losing too much time. And yeah, I'll play a move like queen f3. No, she hates that move. Maybe queen e2 or rook e1. There's some sort of tactical moves like queen e2 is an option. No, it hates that. Rook e1. Knight b5. So what are my counter moves here? So I know queen f3. Queen f3 I definitely consider, but apparently it's not very good. Like a lazy move. I just prodded that out. Queen f3. Look natural. Probably play it 1 minute, but not best. Rook e1 looks natural. Queen e2, but apparently they're not best. Oh, rook e1. No, that wasn't. Yeah, knight b5 maybe. No? Yeah, knight b5 seems to like. Because this pawn is weak. This is the problem when you play this a5, c5 and you just create weaknesses and then knight b5. The knight is just living there forever. You can't get rid of it. Like if you check the evaluation now, it's the same way as already winning. Wow. So actually hates, like, it hates f5 and thinks f4 is an excellent move, but apparently d5 is okay. That's the way you have to go d5. It looks kind of scary, but you're surviving. There's also knight e5 maybe to consider. Yeah, I definitely consider this move as well. Yeah, so Jonah's okay, but apparently he's got to find d5. It's just about okay. Anything else, and he's in like serious trouble. It shows what a tough standard it is. You know, some of these players I've never heard of. Arad Nazari. Never heard. CRG Krishna I've heard. I lost him in a blitz tournament in London Classic where they had a knockout blitz tournament. I lost to CRG Krishna. Good player as well. You know, we were talking earlier about, you know, it was like lots of Indians have come over the years. He's one, you know, who's coming over earlier than a lot of the other guys. And a good player. How's he getting on? He's underdog on the rating. Yeah, his position's fairly solid. Not much to say here really. Black seems to have prepared the game well. Weird kind of position with the queen on a6, but probably okay for both sides. Comp seems to be about equal. Kirill Alexenko, can he... Yeah, Jules Mussard not having a great tournament. He's already dropped a point. Just come from London Classic where he had a couple of games where he was probably winning against Mickey Adams. And he was definitely winning against Adams. And he was also winning against... who ended up winning the tournament. So that was the one we were talking about luck before, and how you sometimes you need a bit of luck to win tournaments. Adams probably had his luck in that tournament. He had his luck against Jules Moussard. But you would make your own luck, and he found a winning move when Moussard messed up. It was interesting that Adams said that that was probably his greatest ever win, which I would agree with. Because when you get older, you know, when you're in your prime and you're a super GM, somehow winning tournaments doesn't seem that difficult. But when you're older, this is something that bothers me because I feel like I haven't even achieved a tournament wins that Adams has, or even close to it. I've never won a British. Somehow I've got to do my best ever stuff when I'm older, right? It's going to be tough, you know. So, yeah, fair play that you can win a tournament like that when you're 52. It's impressive. Yeah, so I think Keith Arkle's playing, but he's just below. So Keith took a bye yesterday, which is a surprising decision. Because apparently if you take a bye, you get a 0-point bye. Because you got a 0 point for... So I think Keith's logic is if he didn't play that game, if he played that game, he would have been black against 2600. By taking a bye, he's then going to get an easier pair in round 4. But on the other hand, the downside is you just lose a point, right? Which is a very obvious downside when you only playing a 9-round Swiss tournament. You suddenly, I mean, I don't really agree with that decision. I feel like you should just play. And it seems to be, it's kind of sad that somebody would do that because it's just, you know, what I was saying earlier about how hard it is to win prize money. And that you should really be punting for the prize money. Rather than, you know, taking a decision which is obviously not going to benefit you. You know, chess players, we need the money. But on the other hand, you also have to think about the ratings. So, you know, if you feel like you're not going to win a prize, or it's going to be difficult to win a decent prize, is it a good idea to take a decision like that? I don't know. But yeah, when you're older, I think, you know, you're playing a 9-round Swiss, you don't get a rest day. It's very tiring. So yeah, and you're in a nice place. You think, well, I can go down the beach, I can chill out for a day. One downside I would say about this tournament, in a way, is the round start at 4:30. I'd find that very difficult because I'd rather like play at 12. Play at 12, like, I know it sounds early, but you play at 12 and then you finish your game. And then you can just do whatever for the rest of the day. You know, 5 o'clock you might finish even as late as say 5. You can still chill out, you have a good time. I wouldn't want to start at 4:30 because then I get like wound up when I'm playing. I just want to get on with it. You know, you're sitting around, you're worrying. I don't like to spend like hours preparing, so I'm only going to do maybe an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours max. What are you going to do for the rest of the day? You don't want to go out in the sun at like 2, right, do you? Because you're just going to get burnt to a cinder. So you're going to be like spend a lot of time hanging around the apartment, bored out of your skull. If you get up at like 10, 11, 12, it's fine, but I tend to get up about 8, so there's a lot of hours to kill before you play. They used to have that problem in the London Classic. So the games would start at 4:30 again. Or 4 p.m, I can't remember. I think it was either 4 p.m. or 4:30. So you'd have like the whole day to kill. I go into Richmond Park, I walk around Richmond Park for 2 hours. You still, you know, even that doesn't kill all the time. Well, that's what I would do. I'd go into Richmond. I was staying in Richmond a lot of the time. I'd go into Richmond. I'd have like a cafe lunch or something, and then I'd walk around. I'd walk up to Richmond Park. So if you leave about like 10, you know, then that's already killed like 3 hours. So it's 1 o'clock, you come back, chill out for an hour, and then head off for the games. Right? I'd get there for say 3-ish. And then probably go up to the venue and hang around there for a bit and then chat to people and then play the game. So that's essentially what the day consisted of. But yeah, it's a little bit of an issue, you know, in chess. Is like, would you rather have a an earlier start or a later start, right? Even when I play Hastings, I find Hastings, I get up around about again, you know, I'd often wake up about 8. You might have your breakfast. I think the place I stay doesn't even do breakfast, or the place I stayed last year doesn't even do breakfast. You have your breakfast. Well, you go into town, right? Have some lunch, say at 10, or have some brunch or whatever. Have some breakfast. Walk around for a bit. That might burn up an hour. So you're now at 11. What I ended up doing actually, I go down the gym, but like maybe like an hour down the gym. So let's say you left. Let's say I'd done my